Welcome to the Wellness as a Way of Life podcast, your one-stop, all-encompassing source of wellness, knowledge, wisdom, inspiration, and motivation. Here we teach you why not all wellness trends are for you, how to figure out which ones are, how to best adapt them for your personal wellness toolbox, and how ultimately to integrate your wellness practices so fully that they become to feel like brushing your teeth. A foundational part of who you are and not a check mark on your to-do list. This week on Wellness as a Way of Life, I am thrilled to share my conversation that I had with Debbi Sluys. She is a personal development and empowerment coach. Her company is called Dare to Declare. Debbi empowers people to live their best lives and be the best professional they can be by discovering their vision, balancing their lives, and realizing their inner power. She is an expert in vision boarding, and she's going to tell us all about her work and her viewpoint on how vision boards are essentially the modern day prayer for women, how order promotes focus, digital versus paper vision boards, goal versus vision boards, and vision boards as self-regulation. So, very excited for this conversation. It's a good one. Let's dive in. Hi, Debbi. I'm so happy to have you here today. Thank you for coming on Wellness as a Way of Life. How are you? Tell us a little bit about your morning so far.
Fabulous. Well, interesting morning. My husband and I were at the lawyer's only for good things, but we were actually finalizing our wills. So now that we're sort of in this encore phase of our life, we realized our will had to do with our children when they were younger and, all of those kinds of responsibilities. So just an interesting perspective to know that you're aging and things that we need to take care of and be responsible for. So yeah, just had some interesting conversations, but just got back from the lawyers. That's what I've been doing.
Nice. Well, it's good to check off those boxes for sure. It just gives you, a deeper sense of ease, I think, in the long run. So tell us a little bit about how you became so passionate about vision boards.
Yeah. So it had to do with, I actually hadn't done a vision board up until 6 years ago. I knew about it. I think like a lot of people, just sort of imagined it was like a high school collage, and somehow, with messages like the movie The Secret, it just somehow works. But I didn't really understand. I didn't really know what the law of attraction. In fact, I was a little bit nervous about the law of attraction. I thought, is it kind of like voodoo magic? Like, I don't know. It just kind of made me very nervous. And then I was in a role for 30 years in a leadership position in childcare. So I was a multi-site, not-for-profit director of a childcare organization. And what I recognized was, especially in the last number of years, a lot of people that have been attracted to that field were not understanding, not self-aware, and in some cases lacking self-confidence. And perhaps the guidance counselors had said, well, if you don't know what to do, you can always work with children, and that's just not a great start to a career. And certainly it makes it more challenging for me to lead them. And I saw this lack of confidence. And when that happens, overall, the culture is a bit shaky then. And so my role was to support them with professional development, not personal development, but what I realized was they really were needing self-awareness and personal development. So I also was going through my own journey. As I said, I'm now in my 50s, but that was, again, back, I was just turning 50. And I thought, it's time. And I started to read about people like Brené Brown and her, TED Talk on vulnerability, Simon Sinek, like, what's your why? And those really resonated with me. And even Tony Robbins around, human needs. And I just got curious about that. And then I just felt like I was meant for something bigger. And I think when I say that, I know so many women feel the same way. And it's what I understand now is it's actually universal law, because if we're not growing, we actually are perishing. And so this growth inside, like I meant for something bigger. And so I did something really uncharacteristically brave, in that I booked a photo shoot without knowing what it was for. Like specifically a branding photo shoot. I actually went to photographers in my town and I said, who would you hire? And they sent me to this woman outside my town, in a neighboring town. And at that time, I wasn't used to investing in myself. And it was a lot of money for not a specific purpose. But I was following my intuition, and I went and had that photo shoot. And that was the first time that images and what was possible connected for me, because it was my own image. And I saw the self-image, and that girl was $1 Million Deb. Like I was like, she's a rock star. And the photographer said, but it's you. And I'm like, oh, doesn't match how I see myself in the mirror right now. But I could feel it. And I hung on to that magical feeling, and it gave me the courage to go into a web design company. And so I did things so backwards in terms of what society might think, where I didn't have a fully executed plan. And certainly I wasn't making decisions from my current reality. I was making decisions from my vision. And so that's when vision boards came into my knowing. And then I started to research. I came across Jack Canfield. He co-wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul. He's the godfather of vision boards. I consumed all of his YouTube videos, all of his information, and I was hooked and I was obsessed.
Okay, I love that backstory. And I think it's a common thread in entrepreneurship, right? That there's maybe not the, logical, in air quotes, path. You really need to feel into it. So we were chatting before, and you said you just got back from a retreat with him. So can you, dish a little bit on, what was your biggest takeaway from was that the first time you'd met him in person and been in his presence? And, was there something that matched up differently than you thought, maybe?
Yeah. My journey with Jack Canfield, my husband sometimes jokes with me. He's like, should I be worried? Because I kind of stalk him. Yeah. So, I found him at the beginning. And so then what I did was in 2018, before I opened my doors, I decided to, again, what I considered that time a big investment, which was to pay to see him in person in Boston. It was a 1 day to greatness. It was like a, intensive kind of training. And I sat in the cheap seats, but I was just entranced with what he had to say and all that he had to give. And I bought his Success Principles book, and I got the CDs. And so that was my first time. And that day I wrote in my workbook, I will do, and some other goals, but I will do a big training with Jack Canfield. And that I still have it. It's right beside me here. And then so I started my business, and it was more like a hobby because I was still doing my other full-time job as a childcare director, but I was gaining, experience practicing the workshops, using my studio. And then November 2021, I had an opportunity to be interviewed by him for his Success TV. And
wow, that must have been exciting.
It was. And I flew to California again during COVID. All the stars aligned. And it was an extraordinary interview. But what was really remarkable was, again, the magic and the quantum leaps have always happened when I've trusted my intuition. And after the interview, there was just an opportunity for some small talk. And my mind went blank because I'm thinking, what do I say to Jack Canfield? And so I said the first thing that I say to my clients, which is, how can I support you? And he looked a bit taken aback by that question. And he said, well, you could become an affiliate. So I am, and I'm an affiliate of his programs. He said, would you like to write a chapter in my next book?
Wow.
Yes. And again, inside, I'm like, and then on the outside, I'm all calm, like, oh, that would be lovely.
Happy dance inside.
Exactly. And so again, with COVID and so forth, things I hadn't heard anything about the book. That was, like I said, November 2021. And then I was coming back from a vacation with my family. We were in the Miami airport, and I received an email from Jack Canfield. Initially, I thought it was spam because I thought, Jack Canfield. Yeah, right. He has my personal email. Well, no, he does. And he asked me about the submission and I was like, oh, it's still in the works. That's amazing. And then when I got home, there was a request, dude, I want to go and have a 5-day retreat with he and his business partner and the co-author of the Success Principles, Janet Schweitzer. And it was like a no-brainer. Again, I followed my intuition. At this point, again, investments are so much higher than they were even 3 years ago. But when I think about, because I have the money now in my business, I'm making the money to be able to invest it at that level. And so, I got to spend 5 days with Jack Canfield. And so I would say what I wrote in 2018 definitely manifested a few weeks ago at that retreat. I got to do a big training with Jack Canfield.
Incredible. Well, I can really relate to that. I just recently went to Tuscany and spent a week with Rich Roll and Julie Pyatt, who are sort of, I deem them my wellness. They're definitely my biggest mentors for very different aspects of my well-being. But yeah, it was massive. And also the incrementation, the incrementing of like what's considered a big investment. I relate to that part too. So we keep pulling in this thread of intuition. So when you personally say, I followed my intuition, what does that mean to you? And maybe like, where do you go in your body? Is it a feeling? Is it a quick knowing, or is it something more like you're feeling like there has been a lot of signs that are pulling you towards something?
That's a great question. I feel it in my body. I talk about it like it's in my bones. So it's not even something that can just leak outside my body like blood or water. It's like, it's in me. And it's like, if I don't do it, I will wither. It needs to happen and it will happen. There is a way. So it's that strong with these kinds of intuitive urges, I suppose, nudges that happen. And perhaps they would come more frequently. Again, if I would meditate, I think meditation is something that you asked me at the takeaway from the retreat. Jack led us through some beautiful meditations and I see the power of them. I am an A-type personality and I'm always going a million miles an hour, and meditation feels painful to me, even though I love to pray. And I love the idea that prayer is the asking and meditation is the listening. And so I realized that I'm only doing, the left brain part of it, which is the asking, and the meditation feels like the right brain, which is the listening. So when I am feeling it in my body, I'm listening. I'm listening with my whole body. And I think that, again, messages would probably come more frequently if I gave myself space to do so. I just went in circles there. Did you catch that? Did that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I totally agree that those are two beautiful examples, prayer and meditation. And I think breath work, yoga, like there's so many mindful practices, hunting, forest bathing, anything that helps you be more in the present moment and be more aware of like what's actually going on in your body, the relationship between how you feel in your body and what you're thinking or not thinking or what you're paying attention to. Those are all such key pieces to tuning into your intuition and really feeling confident that, what's occurring to you in that moment that you want, need, desire, you can trust, right? Like it's something I think you build up over time, that you can trust this intuition opposed to it being like, because I think particularly, children are very in tune and we sort of socialize it out of us that you can trust this inner knowing, because we have all this inner knowing that's maybe not socially appropriate in a given context, right? And so then you little by little learn to tune to an external, is this okay for the group? Is this okay in society? Not like, is this what I deeply desire? So how do you weave that into when you're walking someone through vision boarding? And I'd love to know, because I see you have beautiful, physical vision boards behind, what's your sort of take or opinion I'm a vision boarder. I actually have, a file in Instagram that I call vision board. That's just, and once in a while I go back and I do it in Pinterest, but I kind of felt like you mentioned off the top that like, that's not the same thing.
Yeah. Well, there is no wrong way. I'll just say that. And it's certainly, there's evidence that when you decide, and again, you nudge the universal laws, they will work. But what I've done is I've refined the process, and that I support my clients to accelerate their manifestation more quickly. And so, sometimes people will say, well, I put on my vision board and 20 years later, I realize I'm living in that house. Well, what if it's not 20 years? What if we can make it, 2 years, 5 years, like that? We can, again, really accelerate that manifestation. So I'll start first with your question about how do I weave the idea of trust? I see the vision board actually as a prayer. I see it as the ask. It is the request, and it's done through a state of gratitude, and it's radical gratitude. So this is my purpose actually, is that I'm adopted, and I've seen, actually, I've had an opportunity to see what my life could have been like. And so I get to live this life on purpose because I'm grateful for the fact that I was adopted and out of a foster home at 5. What am I going to do with it? I am going to expand it, and I'm going to live as large as possible into it. And I get to do that with intention and purpose. And the way that I do that is by putting out my requests on my vision board. And so gratitude and radical gratitude is being grateful for what has not yet even occurred. We're in society, we're taught about gratitude as past tense, like, oh, I'm thankful for, that. And we even teach little ones, right? Say thank you, right? When they receive something. But what if we are waking up in a state of gratitude for the day that has not yet even occurred? That's trust. That's belief in the unseen. That's faith. So when we are in that state, then that's when we can really be open to receive and manifest. So that's how I weave it into the vision board, is that we do live a human existence, obviously, so we get to enjoy the human pleasures of life, which do include things like a vehicle and shelter and travel, but it also includes things like relationships and love and equality, respect and harmony. And so it's interesting. Sometimes I have people who are so self-aware that they really have a difficulty coming back down and putting physical things on their board. And then I have other clients that are just so entrenched in the getting, where they are struggling with the being. So it really does start with the being, and it's be, do, have. Who do I get to be? The best version of me. But that version of me lives in a home, and, fill that home with love. What does that look like? Imagine, on my current vision board, which is in my private space, the one that you see here, my past ones, I have a lake house on there. And I can imagine, enjoying that space with my family and my husband, and inviting friends over. So a couple of quick protocols for you and for anyone that's listening is that universal laws, the first law of heaven is order. And so we want to have order on our board. It promotes the focus. So if you have a collage and your brain has to physically pull the images apart so they're not competing with one another, that gives it an additional task. So you want to have the images have some space, white space around them. It gives them presence. It gives the eye a place to rest. If you've done anything with design, when you hang artwork, you want to have it so that it has respect. So I recommend large images, a board like 20 by 30, and not a collage for those couple of reasons. And we go deeper. I have an academy where I teach others to do this. And then the other thing is digital versus paper. And we had this conversation before we got on air here. And I am a big proponent of paper because my background is in early years. And what I know is when you have it in the hand, it's then in the heart. And, people will say, oh, well, digital is easier. Well, I want you just to examine that very statement. This process is simple, but it's not easy. And we access a different part of our brain when we actually Google search something. And our ego goes to the aesthetics, and it goes to perfectionism, and it goes to being right. Where when you're actually going through pages of a magazine, you're using your intuitive thoughts, like we were talking about earlier, and you're engaging your whole body, your heart and your head. Whereas I think when you're doing the digital, there's more of an opportunity to just be in that left brain, which is in the thinking versus the heart.
I totally agree that there's got to be that solidifies it on different and or multiple other levels, similar to, paper to pen journaling is so much more powerful than typing something into your phone, be it a gratitude journal or goal setting. And I think there's something really beautiful to having it physically in your space. And honestly, if you have it hanging in your home, you're going to have it present, I think, more than a digital version that you would go back to regularly, but you're not going to pass it multiple times a day.
Exactly. So I recommend that you put it in a space, depending on your family. You want it a safe space, meaning that you don't need to defend it to anyone. Anyone that can see it actually needs to encourage you with it. They need to be in your cloud of cheerleaders. So in that case, for many people, I say maybe in your closet. For me, I have it in my bathroom because then I coincide with my other habit of brushing my teeth. So at least twice a day. And the best time of day is in the evening before you go to sleep to look at it. So you want to make it as easy as possible, but take a photo of it, make it your screensaver, because the more often that you can view it, the better. I also ask and recommend to my clients that they create affirmations to go along with them, because the vision, here's another distinguishing factor with the way that we do the vision boarding, is that many people, I think, mistakenly make goal boards, and they're more about to-do lists, and they're more about the hustle, like, what do I want? And I got to get at it. I'm going to check it off. Some people tell me proudly, well, I actually, as things manifest, I take them off and I put them away. So it's kind of like, again, it's that ego that we want to get that check mark and that gold star. But the way that I ask my clients and guide them is the visions that you put on your vision board need to be bigger than what you can accomplish yourself physically. If you know the how, you're not dreaming big enough. That's a goal, not a vision. So the vision needs to be beyond you, which makes this process very scary and vulnerable, because you're putting something out there that you don't know how it's going to happen. But that's where the miracles happen. And then it's the habits that we create, which are the goals that we can break down the smaller steps. That if it's, for example, that lake house, then perhaps it's like reaching out to a realtor to say, and this is, so I'm telling my personal story. I actually, I've reached out to a realtor and said, I'm looking for this. Can you keep your eye open for that? Right. And, she's not laughing me out. She's like, all right, we'll see what we can do. And so it's nudging, it's making those decisions. It's creating energy waves, and it's sharing and declaring your vision with others.
So when you invite people through this exercise, do you give them a time frame, like 5, 10, 20 years? I ask because you're pointing out that it's, not goal oriented. It's more like, what is the emotion, the deepest desires, and like think way outside your comfort zone. Do you give them a time frame?
Yes. So I'll say to them, 5 to 10 years, think about what it is that you want, put it out there, but know that it will probably manifest much more quickly. So that's not up to you. And you will probably want to do a new vision board within a year. There's something about the calendar year that, like almost to the date that people create one, the next year they're back and they're looking to create a new one. And this is the other thing, is create a new one. Don't take pictures off your current one. Like, let it, it's like wine. It's just going to age beautifully. And I had it actually where I met, she's a large influencer here in Instagram and on the internet. And we had a chance meeting. One of her coaches connected me with her. And now I'm going to be doing a full vision board retreat for her and her leaders. And as I was speaking with her, I said, oh my goodness, I have you on my first vision board. Now, I don't know if it's actually her. I don't think so, but it looks exactly like her, like the background. Mm-hmm. And then I sent it to her and I said, look, this is you. And she's like, oh, She goes, look at the flowers on my desk. Like they're identical to the ones I had in my picture. And so it's when those kind of things happens that literally the goosebumps stand up on my arms that I realize, okay. And that was like from 5 years ago, but there's many other things that have manifested already. So continue to look back at your vision board through the lens of gratitude, knowing this is what my current reality is. And here's what my vision board is. Because what I've discovered is manifestation doesn't often come in a big trumpet kind of announcement, like, da, 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 your life has changed. It's usually in a whisper that you suddenly look back and think, oh my gosh, this is what my vision was for my life. And I actually am living it. I don't know if you've experienced that, but that's been my experience, that it's
like
more of a knowing,
analogy,
realizing.
the knowing and the whisper. So last question, because you sort of touched on it. If this is an annual practice, is there a time of the year that you really recommend people do it? Or is it really, again, intuitive? Like for me, for example, I feel a really powerful energy. I was born in April. So, spring in itself is a lot about regeneration. Like I get really excited about a new year when it's a new year on my birthday in April, more so than I feel like this massive, upkick of energy in January per se. I also know that for a lot of people, September can be like a sort of regenerating spiritual month. Do you have like a personal time of year that you recommend to people, or do you also tell them to tune into their intuition around when's their year for the vision board?
I have never consciously realized the birthday thing. I'm in April too, by the way. And that's when I've created my own vision boards. You're right. Like, thank you for that. So this is my takeaway from our talk today. I love that. I'm going to share that with others because I think that's brilliant. And I hadn't realized that that's why I've been doing it in April, because I feel this sense of, before coming into that, like, what do I want this next year personally for me to be? So thank you for that. I hadn't realized that. So no, you're absolutely right. Like I don't, it's not the typical time of year in January, although most people think about it like that, because many people think about vision boarding more as a vision board party, like a New Year's Eve kind of thing. But I actually stay away from that, because then people tend to get into resolutions. And again, it's more the goal setting. So intuitively, I think whenever that's feeling like you're ready, you'll know that you're ready. You've come to a crossroads. You feel like this is not, I no longer tolerate this in my life anymore. And I'm meant for something more, and I'm ready to get focused and clear, and I want to create my life. That's when it's time to do a vision board. People do it though around, I've had a group of women that they had in their group, they had a woman pass away. And so in memory of her, they decided to honor her by creating this, doing their own personal vision boards in her honor. It was just beautiful. That happened in November. But I would say September is definitely the second new year. People tend to get back into academia, more of learning, wanting to create something for personal their life.
Growth.
Yeah. So I would say January is probably the most popular, January, February, March, and then September, October, November. Those are probably the most common times that people are doing them, but there is no right or wrong time. It's really, I would say, trust your intuition. If you're ready, you'll know you're ready for something more.
Beautiful. So what's the best way for people to connect with you, Debbi, if they want you to come do an event for them, or, they just want to work with you one-on-one?
Sure. Well, actually, my lawyer said to me today, I checked out your website. And I said, you did? How fun. So, so she told me she loves it. It was easy to navigate. So yeah, go to my website. There's actually a fun quiz on there that it's free, and you can see how big that you dream, how well you discover, and then how clearly you declare what your vision is. It gives you a really nice score to see where your strengths are and where you might be challenged. So that's on there. There's an e-guide as well. So that's all on the front page. And it's either my name, which is Debbi, Debbi, Sluys, SLUYS.com, or declare.com. So everything's there, and you can find all my social media links at the bottom of the homepage there too.
Perfect. Well, we'll definitely share all that in the show notes. And it's really been a pleasure. I really enjoyed our conversation. I learned a lot. I love how you look at this. And I think it's just an absolute wonderful way to help you feel more in tune to who you are, what you desire, how you want your life to look and feel on the day-to-day, but also, the future. Last little tidbit, if you were to put on or say, how is vision boarding a part of wellness as a way of life? How do you think of it in terms of supporting your health and your wellness?
Well, my background is in early years. And so with children, one of our main objectives with them is to support them to self-regulate. So even as toddlers, instead of, if they don't get what they want, just throwing themselves on the floor, hurting their head, screaming, kicking their feet, we want them to be able to regulate their emotions. Well, some of us as adults, we might have that little inner child who's still kicking and screaming, or who's going off and hiding, fight or flight. And so a vision board supports you to self-regulate. It's where you are now in your adult decision-making, you're deciding what it is that I really want. And when that inner child shows up because you're triggered, go back, breathe, focus on your vision board, and remember who you are and what you want. And so I would say for your overall wellness, the vision board is a beautiful tool to help you self-regulate.
It's amazing. Thank you so much. I love that piece as well. So perfect place to end this off. Thank you, Debbi, for being here. It's been an honor, and I look forward to sharing this interview with everyone.
Thank you.
Hey there. One last thing I wanted to share with you. If you're enjoying this podcast, it would mean so much to me if you could rate and review it on your favorite podcast platform. It really does help us grow the show, and this being so important to me to get this message out to more women to help them optimize their wellness and ultimately their lives. This is my mission, and I would greatly appreciate it if you could support the podcast by rating and reviewing. Thanks in advance. Have a good one.